Hello, 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 everyone. Hello. Great to see you all here. Happy Tuesday. Hi, everyone. Great to see you all. Wonderful. So we have got a special guest here, Sid. Hello, Sid. If you want to say hello, you're more than welcome to. It'll be great to see your face. And I'll make you the co-host. Hi, Sid. Great to see you.
Nice to see you
Okay,
guys.
so I'm just making you the co-host for you to share later on. So let me introduce you to Sid. Sid and I actually reached out to Sid a while ago, and I saw that she was doing group classes. I saw that she's got this amazing business. She actually, I'll let her tell you about her business, but she actually has a business that teaches hundreds of kids with group classes, and she's doing really, really well. And so I was just so excited to meet her and see, how she structures her business, how she's able to teach so many kids and do so well. So we got chatting and we connected, and I said, you have to come and meet the iTeachers. You have to come and share with us. So I'm so grateful for your time today, Sid, that you've come to share with us. And I know that you're going to unpack how to teach group classes with us. And I'm very, very, very excited to learn with the rest. So over to you, Sid. I'd love you to just maybe introduce yourself. And then if you want to jump in and share your screen, you're more than welcome to.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jess. And I'm excited to be here today. So I do have a presentation that I'll share with you in a second, and I'll kind of recap a little bit about me so you know who I am. So those of you that are in the UK, I don't think I recognize anyone from here, but I'm known in the UK education world from people that I met during COVID online and we worked together. But I don't think I know many of you, so I will do an intro and showcase what I do. So let me just check that this is working first. And I'll share my screen.
How many
Okay.
teachers here are from the UK? Do you want to raise your hand or say hello in the chat? I know some of us are British. Good. Christina's British. I'm obviously from the UK, but I'm just a bit from everywhere as well. Okay, good. Mahindra is from the UK. Yeah,
That,
great.
is that working?
Yes, we can see your screen now, Sid. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so now I'm not going to be able to see all of you guys. This is the joy of working with a
You
big
can
group.
actually change, I think, the view. You might be able to change the view.
Yeah,
I don't know if you're familiar with Zoom. I can see you and everyone else.
yeah,
Um,
I can see half the people.
oh, okay,
I'm
great.
just gonna bring open my chat because I'll be getting you guys to comment and take part as well. So when Jess asked me to come in and do a talk about group classes, I have to talk about branding as well because I think the two go hand in hand. So one of the challenges that a lot of people have is how do we start group classes? How do I get people on board? Especially if you're coming from doing one-to-ones. How do you get into group classes? So what I'm going to be talking about is I'll give you an overview of me first and what I do and the different types of classes that I do. We'll talk about the different types of groups that you could run, potentially online and offline, depending on what your business is about. And then also we'll then deep dive into branding and how important that is when you are looking at doing group classes, because there's loads of different types of group classes. It doesn't have to be the traditional format of what you imagine when you think of a school. So I'm gonna just give you a little recap of what Jess kind of introduced me at the beginning, but I'll go into a little bit more detail. So I know I look young, but I've been an entrepreneur for 17 years. I've worked in a variety of different industries, including publishing, but education's been the big one. I've been working in that for a good 15 years. So I've actually set up a couple of businesses in that arena. I'm multi-award winning, so I've got awards that are associated with me. So I've got STEM Woman of the Year, I think I got one year. But there's also multiple awards awarded to each of my businesses as well. So the STEM business that I've got has got multiple awards, but also the online school that I'm running. And that really helps because you can have that on your footer in your emails, you can have that on your websites, and it gives that amount of credibility, especially right at the beginning. I would really recommend if you're really early on in your journey, and which I was when I started the online school, I made sure that I applied for awards and I got involved in that. Once you've got it and once you've got the traction going, it's fine. But when you're starting out, I think having that credibility really helps. I'm a STEM communicator, like I mentioned before, so I've been doing that for a long time. My uni degree was in physics, and I'm a serial entrepreneur. So at the moment, I've currently got three, four, four businesses running at the same time, multiple projects happening in each business. So there's a lot that I'm doing, and so I wear different hats. And in the context that I'm coming today, it's more from a helping and supporting other educational businesses. So what else? I'm a qualified teacher. I taught in state, grammar, and private schools in the UK. I qualified in teaching science, physics specialism. So I've got a master's in physics, but it was maths and physics at uni. So I can also teach maths as well to A level as well. And I'm also a business coach. So during COVID, because I didn't have anything else to do, even though I was running multiple projects, I got qualified as a business coach as well. So that's a little bit about me. And then you might be thinking, what does Sid know about group classes, right? Especially if you don't know me. So my business Femtinos is a STEM organization. And prior to COVID, I ran that with around 10,000 kids. So these were 10,000 kids in group classes, different forms of groups. Some of them were small groups, like groups of 6. Some of them were big science shows, up to 20, not 20, 200 kids. So I remember doing some in a library where we had 200 kids participating actively, which was great. And this is a photograph of one of our weather shows where we were looking at lots of science experiments, and you can see they're doing the classic balloon experiment where they're looking at electrostatics. I don't know whether you can see me. Maybe I was taking the photograph in that, but I was dressed up in rainbow attire. It was great. And I painted my face yellow. One of the girls came up to me at the end and she goes, "Miss, is everything okay with your face?" Because she thought my makeup had gone wrong. I was like, no, 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 it's deliberately yellow. It's not my foundation. It's deliberately yellow. So I've been doing a lot of group classes. This is from our periodic table, and you can see from the date it's before COVID. And we used to give out journals to the kids, and you can see that they've created a little transition metal display, I guess, and they've got little precious metals in there. This is one of our science shows. We had 200 participants in this science show. I don't think you can see everyone around the back. And it's very interactive. They had lots of materials. They all made slime. Thankfully, there was no carpet on the ground. So there's different ways that you can do group classes. And this is another one, dissection day. I've got one coming up for Valentine's Day. We're going to be dissecting hearts on Valentine's Day. This is a brain, a real life brain here. Not a human brain. I don't think they'll allow us to use human brains. But yeah, you can see how important branding is. They all dress up, they all look the same. It's a whole experience that you're creating around what you're delivering. Now, you might not always be delivering stuff like this, right? Science hands itself really nicely into this kind of stuff. But during COVID, all of that stopped. I didn't have any access to my resources. I didn't have any access to anything else. Everything was locked away. And then I had to kind of think about what I could do online. And my business at the time, Femtinos, you can't really translate that online. I tried. I tried doing a couple of experiments online. It wasn't the same. And the whole purpose of Femtinos was hands-on learning, so they wouldn't have to be on screens. So I couldn't use that same brand to do online work. And so I decided to set up a separate business altogether, and it's called UK Virtual School. It's still running. We started our 4th academic year, and we purely specialize in home education. That's it. So we specialize in home educating families. So all our teachers work daytimes only. Okay, so we work daytime, and we've got a global following now. We've got kids from around 30 different countries across 5 different continents, but we're purely focused on home education. And you can see from the website, it's very colorful, very attractive for kids. We talk about our core values, very central to who we are as an organization, and we talk about them on the first page. Okay, so this is what I'm currently working on full time. Femtino still happens. I've got a team that runs the sessions. Like I said, we've got the dissection day coming up. I'm going to be doing that because I can't miss that. But I'm more involved with the UK Virtual School at the moment. Now, when it comes to classes, there's lots of different types of group classes that you can do. Okay. And when we come from a teaching field, we think, oh, it has to be like how it is in school. It has to be a classroom style. That's what people want to pay for. And that's not necessarily true. There's loads of different ways and opportunities, especially now with the online world, that you can actually access clients from all around the globe or even more locally. And you can do face to face, you can do online, you can do a hybrid version. But there's loads of different opportunities. So in tutoring groups, which is what traditionally a lot of educators go into when they come from a teaching background, you could do face to face, you could do online. And then online, you've got two different options. You can do Zoom classes. So a bit like how we are today, we can see each other and everyone is got their camera, or most people have got their cameras on and you can communicate. But you've also got webinar. So webinar is a different functionality on Zoom. And I don't know whether other online platforms also have this, but in Zoom in particular, a webinar functionality allows you to have hundreds and hundreds of people on at the same time, but you can't see them. You can see their names as a host, you can see their names, and they can communicate in chat if you allow that functionality. But the great thing about that is you can get recordings of your class done without any interference from any kids popping in or speaking or anything like that. So there's different ways that you can utilize online depending on what you're doing. And I know some people that have made webinars as their central focus. They charge something like £2-3 and they have hundreds of kids come in at the same time and they're making a good amount of money per webinar. Then they take that recording and they put it online. There's loads of different ways that you can actually make that work. So there's loads of ways now that are really accessible to us as educators. Now, on the other hand, so where I started off, I was doing more workshops and courses and science shows. I didn't ever call them masterclasses. I used to call them 2-day intensive workshops or 2-day intensive dissection workshop, whatever it was. But you brand it around what it is that you're doing. I've also done public speaking workshops, which is a little bit different. It's not as heavily resourced, but it's still workshops, I would say, because it's not so much sit down. So the distinction I make between tutoring groups and workshops is workshops are more hands-on, they're more interactive. You get people out of their seat, they're moving about a lot, there's more activities. With tutoring groups, I see it more as classical sit-down activities where you are going through a curriculum structure in a more kind of traditional school format. And tutoring has changed over time. Like even in my online school, I would say we don't we take elements of traditional schooling in, but there's a lot of things that the teachers do and the kids do that I would say is more kind of going on to workshops. But there's still that element of they're still in their seats, most of them. Though our younger ones are usually out of their seats and they've got puppets and all sorts of stuff that she uses. But it's more classroom based. Where workshops are more kind of hands-on, they're moving around, you've got different workstations set up. And then there's different ways that you can run them as well. You can run them as after school clubs, whether you're doing online, whether you're doing workshops, whether you're doing courses or master classes. It could be after school, it could be weekend clubs, you could do them on holidays, you could do them as daytime. And there's different ways of working in daytime. And I know Jess specializes in international. I mostly specialize in home ed, but I've done stuff in schools as well. So there's different ways that an educator can actually run group classes. And it's about figuring out what area you want to work in, because you can't do everything. Even though I've dabbled in most of these, I've kind of settled now in the home ed world and doing Zoom classes. We don't do webinars, we do Zoom classes. So home ed, Zoom classes, and then workshops. Like that's kind of like the three that, and we've got two different businesses that are working on those. So there's one business that works online and one business that works face to face. And I've created that distinction between the two. So that's what I specialize in, but it's a case of figuring out what do you guys want to work on? And you're going to have your strengths and you're going to have areas where actually maybe you prefer being at home and doing stuff online, or maybe it gives you the flexibility. So one reason why I really like the idea of UK virtual school was because before COVID, I hadn't traveled anywhere. I hadn't gone anywhere because my work was so much location based. And if you take 2 weeks out, you're losing income, right? And when I used to run 14 sessions in a week, that was my bread and butter. And then if I leave that, I didn't have a team. I did have people helping, but I was too afraid to kind of pass it on to someone else and just disappear for 2 weeks. And so I didn't really travel anywhere. And one of the reasons why I remembered in January 2020, I put a post up onto Facebook and I said I would love to travel and take what I do in the UK and do it abroad. Like that was my dream. I really loved the idea of that. And then when COVID came and everyone was on furlough and people were kind of stuck at home, I was stuck at home for 2 years. I wasn't vaccinated, so I stayed at home for 2 years to make sure that I wasn't a risk to anyone and also to myself. And so over those 2 years, I thought, okay, I can put my head down and I can work. And I worked. I worked hard. And the idea was that once everything was lifted and I was able to travel again, I could then take my work with me. So last year, in 2023, I was in a different country every single month. I traveled. I was able to take my laptop with me and just go. And I went to Morocco, I went to Dubai, I went to Turkey, Spain. I traveled in Italy, and it was great because I could just open my laptop and then work and not have to work 7, 8 hours even. And because I had a team around it and be able to do something that I wanted to do. And I did voluntary work in Morocco. I did group sessions there. I worked with a school there. So my dreams kind of come true. And there's still so much more I want to do. But whatever you choose, think about the lifestyle that you want ultimately, because you're going to have to work hard at the beginning. So you want to do something that's going to give you the outcome that you want in the end. If you don't want to be the one that's going to be constantly teaching and stuck to a screen, then you need to create a team and you need to have a vision around that. If you like the idea of running courses and that's something that you want to do constantly, or it might be that you want to do video courses, like you create them and then it gives you a regular income, a passive income, so you're not having to actively teach. So there's so many ways that you can do it. And I think as educators, we're so skilled that we can, when we put our heads to it, we can actually create amazing businesses. The things that we usually have gaps in is the business side of things, which you can learn as an educator, because it's just a case of doing courses, sitting down and putting the work in to actually fill in those gaps. Okay. I'm just going to go through and answer some questions before we get loads. So how do you apply for awards? If you do a search for local awards, depending on what country that you're in, you'll find national and local awards and maybe even global awards. And then it's a case of figuring out whether they have an education award or maybe even looking for specific educational awards. So I actually ran an award ceremony during COVID. We did, they were called UK Ed Awards, and we were looking at educators that were running businesses, not school teachers, but educators specifically, and we ran them online. But I think most awards will happen face to face, especially now that COVID is over. Well, questionable. So I think most things are happening face to face now. So have a look at your national and local awards, and don't be afraid of putting your own application in. Like they welcome nominations, like self-nomination is a normal thing, and that's how most people get into their first couple of awards. It's unlikely someone else is going to put the effort in and nominate you, right? Unless they're your employee and you've asked them to do it. It's unlikely they're going to do that. So don't be afraid to self-nominate. Most awards will be open to self-nomination. And I find it an amazing time to reflect on what you've achieved. Because sometimes you can get stuck into the day-to-day and you forget to reflect on where you've come from. And when you're writing an awards application, it makes you think. So I would really recommend it just for you to kind of, especially in those first few years when you're starting out, you can feel like you're not seeing as much as you hoped in the first few years. But when you sit down and you reflect on what you've done, you'll be like, oh, I've actually done quite a lot. And it gives you a pat on the back as well. And then if you get nominated, shortlisted, brilliant. Like it's great. But even if you don't, it's a great reflection tool. Are we allowed to share images of children without getting parents' permission? Meaning if it's a group, do you have to ask? Yep. So every child that you saw in the image has parental permission. So we get that written. So we don't just do it verbally, it's written permission. I don't know, depending on where you are at. In the UK, we have to get permission. So there's a GDPR regulations that we have to follow, and it has to be written, and we have to be able to present that if it comes to that. So we all have, well, I have permission. We don't tend to get permission for the online classes because we're not going to release the footage. The only exception is when we do events online. So we do like a Halloween dress up, we do Christmas dress up, Lunar New Year, Easter. And then after the event, we ask for permission if we can share those images. If they say no, we just kind of cut the kid out. If they say yes, brilliant, it goes on to our YouTube. But with the face-to-face, we made an effort of asking every single parent permission before we took photos. And it'd be annoying when the odd one says no, because then you have to kind of not take a photo of that particular child. Yeah, so how do you integrate a student who joins a group after the other students have joined, so they haven't advanced at the same stage? How do you support different abilities in a group? Okay, so I'm going to answer that from an online perspective. So with an online, the online school that we run, we do live lessons, but then after class, our teachers do a recording of the content. And this is something we've done right from the beginning because I saw the vision of how it was going to help us long term. So what we have is, if you're joining, like we've got students joining in February, right? So they're joining halfway, like exactly halfway through the year. They will have access to all the video recordings from September. So what we say to them is, go back a few weeks, catch up on those recordings. And the way that we've structured UK Virtual School is that we have a holiday every month. So we do 3 weeks of teaching, and then they have a week or two off at the end of every month. So January, we're off now for 2 weeks. We've had 3 weeks. We started on the first Monday of the month. We did 3 weeks of teaching. So I'm really kind of crazy when it comes to how we do things. Like, I don't care how anyone else does stuff. I'm going to do it my way. And we create something that works. So our 3-week structure works for us, and it works for our families. So if they join in late, they usually have a week or two before they join the next month where we don't have any lessons, nothing to catch up on, where they can kind of use those videos to catch up. And every month they've got that a leeway. So if they join 6 months late, after every month they've got catch up time, so they can go back to earlier content. So that's how we do it online. In terms of abilities, we have a lot of SEN kids. That one thing that I specialize in when it comes to home ed is working with autistic and ADHD kids. We've got loads of them. I think if we were going to, I haven't done a survey, but I think based on how many conversations I have with parents, I think about 70% of our kids are SEN, and that goes autism, ADHD, anxiety, or like any disorders, which means that they don't want to go to school. What's it called? Where there's a word for it,
Social
where they
anxiety?
sorry?
Is it social anxiety? I don't know.
Social, no, there's another one where it's where they don't actually want to go. Avoidance. It's an the avoidance one. I can't remember what it's called, the official word for it. So they just won't go to school. So we've got a lot of those kids. About 70% of our kids fall into that category. But if you were to witness a class, you wouldn't be able to tell. And that's because we match kids to ability groups rather than age groups. So there's one child who should be in year 7, but he's in year 3. And his parents were a little bit kind of, they knew he needed to be in year 3, but they weren't sure how he was going to be impacted by that when he was going to see younger kids. But because he's able to thrive in that class, he's appropriately challenged, but not overwhelmed. And that's the sweet spot that you need to get with the kids. So we have year groups, but then we shift the kids over. So they might be in the right year group for their maths, but they might be a year younger in English. And we're not afraid to do that. And this is what I mean, that when you decide to do something, it has to have a reasoning behind it, but you also need to not be afraid of doing things a little bit differently. And I'm not afraid of doing that. Like, I will do things differently because I think they're the best way to do it. And I have evidence to support it, or I've got the experience to support it. And then it's just a case of building your brand around that. And we're going to talk about branding in a second, building that brand so that you're relaying that information. So before the clients come to you, they know exactly where you stand on that. And that's the important thing. Because if they don't know who you are and how you do things, when they come to you, it's not going to be a good match. And it's just going to frustrate you, and it's going to frustrate them. So you've got to make sure that your branding is on par to get the right people in. How do you make the contacts in other countries prior to working with people in those areas? Because we specifically work with home ed, a lot of home ed groups are also in world schooling groups. They travel because the flexibility of being a homeschooler means that you can travel. And the way that we're structured, that we do 3 weeks and then a week or two off, means that a lot of our families do travel. So we have naturally got into all of these countries just by targeting that community. Now, like, I'm being a little bit more intentional. So we're hoping to set up meetups in different countries. So I've been to Istanbul and Dubai already, where we kind of got a group of families together. And I'm going to be a little bit more intentional in how I do that going forward. But up till now, it's kind of been very organic. People have spoken, they recommended people, they've got a friend in a different country, or they met someone online. And it's been very much through Google searching as well. They search us online, especially if they're looking for a British education. So British education is well known across the globe, right? I question our education system in the UK, but from an outside perspective, everyone loves it. And so if you've got the words British or UK or whatever it is on in your literature, people are going to go for it. Like people across the globe that are planning to move to the UK, or even expats that are abroad, or even people that want an English teacher that is UK based, they will go for that kind of stuff. So it's about targeting a group that you and there's two ways of doing it. Is, are you creating something because you want to target international kids, or are you by accident targeting international kids, right? So it's a case of figuring out what it is that you want to do. Do you specifically want to work with international kids, or is it something that you want to create and then it happens to work with them? So figure out what you want to do and what you specialize in as well, and have an idea of the target market as well. So you're starting, you set a starting day for everyone. As attractive as it may look, you don't book students in a group that has already started. Oh, so someone's answering to someone else. Okay. How did the coaching online go? I'm interested in teaching biology, science, business, English to adults possible, and those wanting to apply to medical schools. Yeah, I think niche is good. So what I'll do is let me carry on with the branding, because all the questions are going to start coming in. So let me carry on with the branding, and then we'll come back to these questions, because having a niche is really good because it means people know exactly what you're offering. Right, let me go ahead. Okay, how do you get clients? First of all, you need to be very clear on what do you do? Okay, what is it that you actually do? Why do you do it? Your story is super important. And do they know you exist? Right? If you can really nail those three areas, you're going to find it so much easier to get clients. So let me go through my two businesses, the ones that are both in education, and I will answer each of these questions for you. So what do you do? Femtinos, we do hands-on STEM workshops, or STEAM, because I did do arts as well. So we do engineering, tech, maths, arts, mostly science workshops. For UK Virtual School, we do online daytime classes. That's what we do. Okay. Why do we do it? So with the STEM, it was always about inspiring the next generation. So all the work that I did around it when I built my own brand was I did science radio. So I was a radio show host for 2 years. It was a STEM show. I invited guests in that were working in different areas and fields of STEM. And that was great because it made me an expert in the field. I used to do science shows. I worked with community centers when they were applying for funding. We would go for STEM because some of the community centers, the funding that they were getting were for kids that wouldn't otherwise be able to maybe go to a science museum, or wouldn't be able to go and take part in certain activities because they just wouldn't have the facilities to go and travel to London, for example. So we have lots of resources, we'd bring it to them. And so we're targeting children that were traditionally not likely to go into STEM, and especially girls and kids from ethnic minorities, and those kind of families. With online schooling, it was about providing high quality alternative to school to support home educators. Like that's why I did it, because I realized there was nothing in the market. Because when COVID happened, people are approaching me and they knew me from my education work. And this is why branding is so important, because you get known for it. And they said, Sid, can you do something online for us that's curriculum based? And I said, no. My STEM workshop was not curriculum based. And so I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And then they were like, oh, but schools are not doing it. They're just giving us worksheets. We're having to teach our own kids. We don't have anything like high quality resources. And then I did a trial session. I did a month of trial sessions. And the feedback that I got was, you weren't just teaching from Twinkle worksheets. And I was like, is that what other people do? And I realized that there was a big lack in quality teaching online. So that's the kind of gap we filled in. And then do they know that you exist? And that's where branding comes in. If you brand yourself well, they will know that you exist, because when they search for you, when they ask their friends, when they go on social media, they'll find you. Okay. So I think the two things go hand in hand. We were going to talk about just branding before, but Jess was like, oh, the group classes is a great thing to talk about. But actually, the two actually go hand in hand. If you're doing group classes and you're struggling to get clients, or you're struggling to get started, or even when you're starting, it's not even about struggling, it's about branding properly so people know what you're doing and how you're doing and why you're doing it. So let's have a little chat about branding. What does brand mean? Now, when people think about branding, they think about logo. I think that's the first thing that people think about. They think about marketing. They think about the images that you're going to have on social media. They think about the slogans that you have and the catchphrases that you use, and they think that that's what branding is. Branding is so much more than that. And there's two definitions here. So in one dictionary, it says a public image, reputation, or identity conceived of as something to be marked or promoted. Okay. So it's not just a public image. Well, you could say public image, reputation, or but reputation comes into it a lot. And then you've got the Oxford Dictionary, which says a particular identity or image regarded as an asset. So it's not just a photo on its own, it's the meaning behind the photo, it's what it stands for. So you've got all these words, and the ones in red tend to be that what people think about when they think of branding. When they think, oh, I need to create a brand, they're like, okay, what colors are my brand going to be? What kind of image am I going to use? What kind of services am I offering within that brand? What kind of products am I doing? What's the slogan? What's the logo? And that's where you stop. That's actually not, that's part of it. That's the marketing element of it. But the other things, the bits in green, the feeling that people have when they approach you, the promise that you're making, the reputation that you've established, all the intangible stuff that comes with a brand, that's also your brand, and that's more important. So the intangible bit, the feeling, the promise, the way that people feel, that is really central to a brand. And that takes more than just sitting down and coming up with a logo. That can take years. So when I came up with the UK virtual school brand, it took years to evolve that. We didn't have a brand. Well, we had a logo, but that it wasn't a brand. And one of the harshest comments I got from a family was, in that first year, we had a basic website. It was really bad. We weren't Googleable. No one could find us. They thought we were a scam because we were just selling on Facebook, and they couldn't actually search for us because it was just a one-page site. And one family member said, your website seems so cold. It doesn't stand for the service you're offering. Like we don't get the same feeling that we do when we're actually in the school. Like your website doesn't say that. Like it doesn't make us feel comfortable. It doesn't give us a warm feeling. And we went through a whole branding period where we were like, okay, how do we rebrand this? And now when you look at our website, the UK Virtual School website, it's fun, it's warm, it's approachable, and it's got a very, very different vibe to our competitors. So one of the key things that I've realized is when I have meetings with parents, they go, yeah, your website spoke to me. Because when I looked at the others, they seemed really corporate, and I don't really want my kid to be in a corporate place where he's just another number, because that's what he felt like when he was at school. So your branding has to speak to the clients that you are targeting. Now, some people might like that corporate look, especially if you're aiming it to a very high net worth client. They're going to like the sleek look and the corporate look because that's what they're going to be used to. So the people that you speak to need to feel the brand from your site, from the images that you put out, the words that you use. We call our community family because we have that warm, fuzzy feeling, and that's what we call it. But for someone else, they'll be like, oh, that's not how I want to be perceived. And that's fine. There's no right or wrong answer with branding. It's about how you want to come across and who you're targeting, and those two things need to overlap. So, on the other end of the spectrum, some people don't like the idea of branding. So this is from a book that, one of my first business books. I still have it. I haven't read it entirely. I still have it though. So in my opinion, branding is one of the single most overused and overhyped ideas in the modern business world. There's nothing magical or complex about building a brand. When business professionals say they want to enhance their brand or build brand equity, they almost always mean improve their reputation. But he does go back to the same thing. He goes, it's overused, but it means reputation essentially. What reputation have you created? And that's going to be your brand. Right. I'm going to get you guys to have a think about something here. We've got lots of buses here. Lots of different buses, lots of colourful buses. Which bus would you get into?
The red one.
Which one?
The red.
The green. Okay, why the green one?
That's the green.
No, no reason?
No, red.
Red. Why the red one?
Of course, I know it well.
It's familiar. Brilliant, it's
Um,
familiar. What anyone else? Anyone else would get into a different, I'm gonna look at my chat so I can see.
I was thinking about green
Why the green?
because it's more small, less people, more you'll be able to communicate. As you said, a community, that's the word that you use. When the students come to you, you like as a you're together as a community. So that bus could be like a community bus where it takes, I don't know, senior pensioners where they go together and they know each other, or it may be a school bus. Even though the middle one says a school bus, that could be a private school bus from a private school, and it's a community going together.
It could be, yeah. And then green can also stand for green energy.
Yeah.
It could
Yeah.
have a different meaning to it. And someone else has said the red one, because I've never been to the UK, would like to go there. Yeah. So red is traditionally the brand that's used when you think of London buses
Yeah.
as well, the double-decker buses. So sometimes it's about being familiar with something. And so let me kind of show you what this showcases in a very interesting way. So it depends if you're in a hurry. Now, if you don't have a choice to make and you're in a hurry and you need to get to a destination, you're going to take the first one that comes up. Okay, so you're going to take the closest one. So if this is me stood over here, I'm probably going to take the closest bus, whichever one stops first, the red or the yellow, right? I'm in a hurry. I don't have the option of choice. Or maybe it's the one that's visible. Maybe the red one's hidden behind some bushes and you haven't seen it. So the one in plain view is the one that you might take. Or maybe the one that's approachable. Maybe you can see that there's a friendly, smiling driver in the yellow bus. So it might be the one that you lock eyes with him and you're like, oh, he looks friendly. I feel safe on that bus, so I'll take that one instead. What about when it comes to which one do you think would be trustworthy? Maybe the yellow one, because look how many people are already on there. There's social proof. There's social proof that people are already using that bus, which makes it a little bit easier for you to go onto it, right? And I think this is the same thing in restaurants. If you see an empty restaurant, you're like, oh, what's wrong with that restaurant? I'm not going to go in there. You see a busy one and you also want to go in, right? And then what if they're heading in different directions? You want to take the one that is going to take you to the destination you're actually going to. They might be going to different areas and they might not stop where you want to stop. So also the one that's heading in the direction that you want it to go. Or it might be that you've got a little bit of time and you want to pick the one that's going to be most comfortable. So actually the green one might be appealing because there's not that many seats. So you're going to get to know everyone. You can have conversations with them. So it becomes about comfort, and also it's clean and the quality of the experience. Or like a lot of you said, familiarity. Is it one that's been recommended or the image that you've seen before? So the double-decker bus might be the one that you take. And then finally, there might be something around budget. There might be different prices. So if you have a little bit of time, you might actually go, right, I'm going to do my research. Actually, I don't want to go on the double decker. It's twice as amount as if I take the yellow bus. So I'm just going to take the yellow bus instead. So when it comes to choice, your clients also have these choices. And you have to decide which type of bus are you going to be. Are you going to be one that's visible? Are you going to be the one that is there when they need it? So when they Google, are you going to be the one that's going to come up? Are you going to be the one that's always going to be on social media? So actually, when they come to making a decision, you're there in front of them. Are you going to be the one that's most approachable? So you're the quickest to have a meeting with them and have a call with them and get back to them. And so actually they go with the first choice that actually responded to them. Are you going to be the one that is going to have a lot of social proof? And that's difficult when you're starting out first. You might not have the testimonials, you might not have the photographs, you might not have the social proof behind it. But once you have it, that can be used to market your business as well. Are you going to be the one that is so focused around the solution that they see and they're like, this is exactly where I want to be? And so this is going to provide the solution I'm looking for. Or is it going to be about the look and the perception that they're going to have when they're linked with you? So certain big brands do that. Where you have high street brands, it's all about, or even like Apple, right? It's about, oh, I have an Apple product. It's about quality, but it's also about the association with it. And recommendations, right? People like to recommend stuff. So is that something that's going to be a big thing around your business? And then pricing. And you can see pricing's right at the end. Pricing is not always the top priority for customers, depending on who you're picking, right? If you are targeting people who are going to look at pricing first, you're always going to be playing a game about which is going to be that you're going to lose customers as soon as they can find something cheaper. So you've got to offer more than just pricing. It's got to be a service and an experience that will get them to be loyal. Okay, so all of these actually add up to create your brand and the feeling that you're going to be creating. So, okay, before I get onto that, there was something else I wanted to say. If I go back here, the intangible feeling that you have when you create a brand, it's very difficult to imagine what you want people to feel. So the two questions that I tend to ask a lot of my business coaching clients is, what would your business taste like if it had a taste? And what would it smell like if it had a smell? And when you start looking at those two questions, it gets you thinking outside of your normal kind of context of colors and images and different senses, and it'll give you an idea of what it is that you're trying to create. Because it might be that you want your business to taste spicy. What does that mean then in a context? It's like it keeps you on your edge. Is it something that's a little bit edgy? Is it something that's a little bit daring? Or maybe it's a nice familiar taste that they're used to. And so it's more comforting. And then the colors and the feeling associated with that is going to be completely different. So those two questions are really interesting just to get your ideas flowing. Right. How are we doing for time?
I am loving this. I haven't even interrupted you once. I think everyone's like, Jess is so quiet, because usually I banter and I'm like, yeah, that's so good. I'm like, I'm just listening. My notebook is like 5 pages full right now.
That's good. That's good.
We have got still 15, 17 minutes left until
it
the
might be a
hour.
Might be a
But
bit
if you want to go over and you want to stay, you can stay as long as you like. I'll be here.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so let's have a deep dive into branding then. And I'm going to give you 3 steps to stand apart, because I think that's very important when we are basically in a very diluted market. I think a lot of educators went online, a lot of educators left teaching. And so we're in a market where I wouldn't say we're competing, because I think if you we're competing with money, but I don't think we're competing on services, because if you create something which is different and is something so unique to your brand, people will see that and they will come to you regardless of whether someone else is doing something similar, because it's about the experience that you're creating. So 3 steps to stand apart. Let's have a look. First one, find your niche in group classes. Okay, so we talked about the different types of classes that, earlier. What is it that you do really well? And it might be that you don't actually do it really well yet, but it's an area that you want to go into. So when I started online group classes, I wasn't good at that. I didn't think online would work, which is why I was so reluctant at first to start it. Like I was so against online learning. I was completely the opposite before COVID. And then when the lockdown happened, you weren't given a choice. Like you had to make it work. And I think sometimes when you're cornered into actually trying out everything and making it work, you make it work. And we've become really good at what we do. I think we've run 15,000 group classes in the last 3.5 years. So I have a lot of experience and we've got better and better and better. So now I think I can train up teachers to teach online with us and they do really well. Teachers that have not come from teaching on the online world community. And we have a mailing list of about 1,000 teachers that want to work with me. And I'm like, I can't. Like we only have a certain number of teachers in the school, right? I can't employ you all. But all we have to do is send a message out on our mailing list and we've got a teacher on board. So you need to work out what you do really well. And then you need to know your market really well. Like what market do you know well? Start with something that you know. So when I started group classes face to face, at first you try everything. You do like school kids, you do this, you do that. And then I found a mix between doing home education classes because my siblings were home educated at the time. So it was really to get them mixing with other kids. And then I carried on because the families wanted, so my siblings grew up and they went to uni. And then I carried on teaching group classes for other kids. And then I knew that market really well. And so when we went online, it was natural for me to go into that area because I knew it well. So think about what you know well first, start with that, and then slowly experiment and then see where else you can go. What problem are you solving? Be very sure of the problem you're solving, right? So I know that there are other online schools, but they take the traditional school setup and they just plunk it in online and they think it's going to work. We take the traditional setup and we go, right, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. Get rid of that, put this bit in and create something completely different. So our 3-week structure, completely different. No one else does that. We take the whole of December off. We ran it the first year and we realized the kids want to hibernate. So I was like, we're not doing that. So I'm not afraid to do things a bit differently and create a structure that then people are like, yeah, that's us, or no, that's not us, which is fine because I know who my market is not. We also don't do assessment. I don't do testing. I don't do grading. We don't mark homework. And again, if a client comes and they want that, I just say, it's not us. Maybe one of the other online schools will work for you. So we're very clear on what we do and what we don't do. And we evolve as well, but there's some clear guidelines of where like, we don't do this. And this is why we don't do it, because I don't think it's effective. We want to work with kids where we want them to love learning rather than just be able to do assessments and testing, because that's what I don't like about the school system in the UK. It's all about assessment and testing. So I just got rid of the assessment and testing. We just don't do it. And so it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, right? Not every family is going to be comfortable with no assessments and no testing and no grading. But there is a market out there for kids that have been traumatized by school, that want a little bit more of a comforting place to learn. They love learning, but they don't want to be constantly assessed and grilled and kind of compared with each other. It works. And so it's not that we don't know where the kids are. We do know where they are in terms of ability because we ask questions, we have conversations with them. And the classes are very interactive. We just don't do any formal assessments. It changes when they get to GCSE. We do one mock exam in year 9, one in year 10, and one in year 11. Just one. That's it. But lower down the school, we don't. And it hasn't affected our exam results. Our average grade was grade 7. And those that actually did that takes into consideration latecomers. If you just look at the kids that did our GCSE right from the beginning, average grade was grade 8. They did really well. It works. So our approach works. And now we have evidence to support it. We didn't 3 years ago, but now we do, right? And sometimes it takes those first people to believe in you. And the way that you get them on the board is you test out the market. Is there a market out there? So I'm going to show you what I did for my 2 businesses. So UK Virtual School what did I do well? I knew how to deliver good quality group sessions face to face. That's what I knew from my previous business. So then it was adapting it for online, right? Who did I know well? Well, I knew the home ed community really well beforehand. And what problem was I solving? So it was a different way of doing things from traditional schools. One of the motivating factors for setting this up was actually the fact that I was a governor at a primary school during COVID, well, before COVID, and then it kind of went into the lockdown. And every governor meeting that we had during COVID lockdown, I said to them, why are you not doing live lessons? And they were like, it's not going to work. I said, have you tried? It was a primary school and they were sending home recordings and homework sheets, but there was no live teaching. And I said, how do you know it's not going to work? And he goes, the head was like, it's not going to work. Our kids are not going to learn that way. It's like, have you tried? He goes, no, but it's not going to work, Sid. I was like, and I got so frustrated with that. I was like, right, I'm going to show him how it's done. and that was part of like my motivating factor of why I started it. I was like, yeah, I'm going to show him he's wrong. And we have kids as young as 5 that learn with us, and it works. And so I proved him wrong. So we've got kids from as young as 5 all the way up to 16. We go from year 1 up to year 11. We did the whole thing. And it works. And so if anyone tells me it doesn't work, I'm like, nope, it works. We've got the evidence to support it. We've got the testimonials. We've been doing so many classes. We've done hundreds of classes for that age group. It works. And then we tested it out for a month. So I didn't know it was going to work. Yeah, I say it works now. Didn't know it was going to work. So when what I did was back in June 2020, we did a 4-week trial. No, I lied. 3-week trial. Yeah, I did a 3-week trial with 15 kids. So we took 15 kids and we did English, maths, and science. I think it was year 5. Might have been 2 classes. I can't remember. It was so long ago now. But we did, no, we must have been 2 classes. We wouldn't have 15 in one. Yeah, I think it was year 3 and year 5 that we did. We did 2 classes, maths, English, science. I did the maths and the science because that was my background. And I had an English teacher who did the English. And we did it for 3 weeks. It was a paid trial. They all paid to take part. Not very much, but they paid. And the idea was, I told them at the beginning that we needed your feedback at the end of the trial. So we did the trial and took the feedback from the parents, and they loved it. And like I said, one of the feedbacks was, I love the fact that you weren't just teaching from a Twinkle worksheet. And that's where we realized there's a gap in the market. We've got testimonials to say it's going to work. We had people that were then willing to pay for something more permanent. And we already had a hype around it because those parents were asking about, is it going to run again? Or they didn't get into the trial. So they were like, oh, are you going to be offering more sessions? So we started with, I think it was 3-year groups. We did year 3, year 5, and year 7. Those were the 3-year groups that we started with in July 2020. And then in September, I slowly started adding more year groups when we got people coming in. And some of our groups only had 1 kid. But I still started it because I knew that if we start, then we can start building up. So you're going to have to also be willing to take those risks early on, because you're not going to get a full class straight away, right? Even though I had loads of people approaching, it said, oh, the timing doesn't work. Oh, it's not the right year group that you're starting. It's not this, it's not that. They come up with excuses, right? So for every 10 people that are going to say they're interested, you're probably going to have 1 or 2 that are actually going to sign up. And that's the kind of rate that you need to have in your head, that not to get disheartened when people say no or come up with excuses, because they are. Not everyone's going to part with their money when it gets to it. They'll say they will, but they won't in reality. And so I think the average conversion rate is around 15, 16%. So for every 100 people, you should have about 15, 16 that convert. Once we nailed our branding, our conversion rate went up to 40%. So for every 10 people, I have 4 that sign up. And even from those 6 that don't, I reckon if I followed up with them, they probably will. We don't have a system in place where I'm following up with people. We don't chase them. We just give them the information and they come back to us if they want to. And some people forget, right? So I think where we've got gaps in that, we could feel like I could probably get it up to 50%, I reckon, if we did it properly. So there's still areas to improve, but if you get the branding right, I think you've got a very high chance of people converting. But still, it's not going to be 100%. Not everyone's going to convert. Right, so for Femtinos, what do I do well there? I'm a great STEM communicator. We do lots of science workshops. I know how to do that really well. Who did I know well? Actually, when I started, I didn't know anyone because I wasn't in that kind of world. Like I wasn't in the world of mums because I don't have kids of my own. So I didn't know anyone. Like I didn't know where to start. And so initially when we started, it was like hitting an arrow and not knowing where I was targeting. And it took, and back then there was no, so I started that business 13 years ago. There was no Facebook groups like we do, like we have now. There wasn't that kind of community back then. And so it was very, very difficult to start something back then. It's a lot easier now, but it's also very overwhelming because you've got so much choice. And the problem was there was a lack of high quality hands-on sessions. So that was something that did exist. Like there wasn't enough. And there was not enough, or there was not enough, and it was hard to reach communities entering STEM. What was I thinking here? Lack of high quality hands-on sessions or not enough sessions, and hard to reach. Yeah, it was hard to reach communities. I don't know what I was thinking. So I was targeting hard to reach communities, so especially girls and ethnic minorities. And so there's a lot of funding that you can get around that. So not every time parents were paying. Sometimes we've got funding to do sessions that then they came for very nominal cost or for free. So and I've tested that for a long time, but it took a good, I think, because I was slower with that and I was learning a lot about business, it took a good 8, 9, 10 years to actually nail what our offering was. So we talk about all of this, but actually it takes years to actually understand it fully and to appreciate it fully. So don't be kind of overwhelmed by all of this and go, I have to do all of this right now. It takes ages. And so some people see the success with UK Virtual School and they go, wow, you've done that really well. Like it grew really quickly. But I had 10 years of knowledge from doing things badly beforehand, right? And it takes a lot of time and effort and doing things and it not working. And one of the mistakes I made with Femtinos is for the first 7 years. Yeah, for the first 7, 8 years, I did not put a single photo of me up on social media because I was afraid. So people did not know my story. I was selling something that was very cold. There was no kind of warm feeling. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know what we offered. There was no photos of me. And I was afraid because I was like, I don't know how people are going to react. I had some bad experiences where people would turn up to workshops, they'd see me in a headscarf and they'd take the kid, even though they'd paid, they'd take the kid and walk off. And they're like, nope, not coming to your session. So I had some bad experiences. I was like, oh, I don't want to expose myself online. But actually, once I did, it filtered out the people that didn't want to be involved with me, which was fine because it opened up the doors for those that did. So it's one of those where actually when you think sometimes you're afraid of putting yourself out there, but by doing that, you're filtering out people that aren't going to be your client ever, which is fine. So I think I made that mistake. So when I started UK Virtual School for the first year, there was no image of me again because I was like, I'm trying something so big here. I don't know if I want to put my image on there because no other online school does that. And that part of that held me back. I was like, with every other online school, it's just a very corporate look. And that's how we started off. And I was like, this is how it's done in that market, right? And then I realized that's not me. I do things differently. Like, why am I trying to fit into an industry that's not how I do things? And so we completely turned it upside down. My photos are everywhere now. It's like UK Virtual School, meet our founder Sid, like I mentioned everywhere. And it has become more of a community rather than it being a school as such. Like I don't call myself a principal or a head teacher. I'm just the founder. So I'm the visionary behind it. And I think that the language that you use becomes really important. And even with we've got heads of departments or heads of school now, but I don't call them heads of school. I call them team leads. So we've got a team lead for primary, team lead for secondary, team lead for enrichment. And I call them like, this is our tribe. Like we use very different words to traditional schools. And we're also on first names. So the brand is everything. It's how you do things. We work on first names. There's no Mr. Smith or anything like that. It's Mark, it's Sid, it's Lucy. Everyone's on first name. And then one of the reasons is because we're online. It makes it so much harder for kids to find you online if you're just using first names. And this is my other business. So UK Educators. So this is branded with UK Educators. And what do I do well there? So it's to help and inspire successful businesses to grow. Who did I know well? I became known in the education world during COVID because I talked a lot about like we should be doing things differently, guys. You need to think outside the box, pivot, do things differently. And the problem back then, just when COVID started and the lockdown started, there was nothing that was specifically focused around the education market. Now there's loads of stuff, which I think is brilliant. Back then there wasn't. There wasn't anything that was happening around, not in our local communities anyway. There was nothing around business support for educators specifically. So that was a problem it solved. I don't do very much on UK educators community now, because I think there's so much other stuff happening. But I still have a website, so you could go and check it out if you want to. And there's some great podcasts on there, but it's not been touched for 2 years or 3 years. Okay, now it's your turn. What's your niche? What can you do really well? What market do you know well, and what problems are there? So if you want to put stuff into chat, I'll also have a look at some of the questions as well.
Hi, can I speak? So
Yeah,
my
sure.
niche is in maths, but up to
Okay.
GCSE level, and I also work for TLC, which is UK based. I help students who've got anxiety because of COVID, or they've been excluded from schools. And that's the company I work for, but I want to start my own business where it's with GCSE students and again with GCSE maths to get them onto 11 plus, to pass the 11 plus exams. And I've looked at UCAT. Someone mentioned before, it's where international students want to come to universities in England, but they have to pass the UCAT exam. Whereas before they had BMAT and UCAT, but BMAT's been phased out this year.
So you want to move, sorry, do you want to move away from the current market you're working with? So you're not going to work with kids with anxiety for
I
maths?
still work that's the company that I work with. So I'm going to
Okay.
continue because I don't know how to recruit those students. That's the company that I've been working with for past 2.5 years.
Okay, but you want to do something completely different now?
Yeah, but these students
Okay.
that I do teach, I teach them maths anyway. So they're from Key Stage 2 up to GCSE level.
Yeah, but I think it's a very different market. So the market that you're currently working with, then they're not going to be the ones that are going to be going for selective exam tests, most likely, right? So you're looking at a completely different market. So it's about kind of getting knowledge around that. So what can you do really well? Well, you can teach maths well. And what do you know well about the market? So I think that's the bit that you need to do, because once you start asking questions, you'll realize where the gaps are and where people need help on. Because what you don't want to, well, when I say like when you start a business, don't replicate what someone else is doing, because that's not, it's a business, it's not entrepreneurial. So an enterprise, you're providing a new solution to a market that needs a solution, right? If something already is doing, if someone's doing something exactly the same as you're doing, what's the point? Like you're going to directly be competing with them. So what is it that you can bring to the market that is not already there?
I
And
want
it's
to do
finding
algebra because 75%, if it's a high paper, 75% of the exam, if it's GCSE exam, it's going to be algebra. And then the rest is numbers. So I want to focus on algebra. I don't know if I said it right.
And I think that's a really good market. So your branding is going to be completely around, I would do it completely around algebra. Then if they come in, you can offer other things, but your main thing should be algebra.
And then with the foundation students, because most schools, what I've realized what they do, if they're getting grade 5 in their foundation exam, they think they could go and do the high paper, which again, it's going to be difficult for them because it's going to be more percentage they need to get grade 5 compared to if they're doing a foundation paper. So I tend to say to the parents, if your child's getting grade 5, leave it at grade 5, unless they want to go into medicine. To get into medicine, they need grade 8 or 9 or 7, depending on what university or college they want to go to. That's another thing that I want to target specifically to the parents. If their child does not want to go into medicine or anything else that expects them to get higher grade than 5, leave the child on foundation paper rather than putting a lot of stress on that child to do higher paper.
Then what you need to do is there needs to be, the branding needs to be around what you stand for and your values, because I'm the complete opposite. So if for maths, I would prefer all the kids do higher paper, because you don't know how they're going to perform on the day. And we had one kid that was put into foundation in her school, and then when she joined us, we were like, nope, she's going into higher. She got a grade 7 in physics, and she would have been limited to 5.
Yeah,
If
that's
she was
if they're on the
able to-
borderline between 4 and 5. I would prefer them to stay on the foundation. If it's higher percentage, then they could go on to higher paper. But if they do move on to higher paper, again, they have to focus on algebra.
Yeah,
That's
so
the
if you focus around algebra, the other things that you're talking about come underneath that. So your branding is going to be around there. So the problem that you're solving is that you're getting you're solving 70% of the exam paper. Basically, you're helping with 70% of the exam paper. And then it's about testing out your market. So whatever product and service that you're going to be offering, test it out with a small market, get their feedback based on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Right, I'm
We've
going to
got
move
some
on.
other questions here, yeah. Goran is asking, do you use social media marketing, especially modern ones like TikTok?
I actually don't. I think I started on TikTok. I did a couple of, I don't even know what my account is anymore. I haven't. I think for me, Facebook's has been a big one because I've got a good amount of social following on Facebook and I've been using it actively for a long time. I've not really, people say LinkedIn. LinkedIn doesn't really quite work for me because my clients aren't on there. Facebook works for me. Instagram hasn't really worked for me. Facebook is the one that works for me, right? I think it's about what you're familiar with and what you're most active on as well. If TikTok works, TikTok is something I want to play around with, but it's also about kind of going, where am I going to maximize my time? And TikTok is a nice to have. Can I monetize it? Probably not at this point. So 2024, my goal for this year is monetization. I think I've done a lot of groundwork and I just want to focus purely on monetization. So if something new comes up, I'm like, can I monetize this? If I can't, I let it go. And TikTok's been one of those things where I've gone, I can't monetize it. I think for brand building, it could be really good, especially if you're brand new and you don't have an established audience already. You could build a good following on TikTok and then bring them into, I don't know, a group or an mailing list. But if you're already established and you've got a following, I think TikTok is going to be more work than it's going to be worth from my perspective. So I personally don't use TikTok, and Instagram, personally, I don't use it. Like I post images, but it's not something that gains traction. It's just for if people search us, we can come up. One thing that I would say is if you're the main kind of person that is driving your business, brand yourself as well as your business. So if you put my name, Sid Femtinos, into Google, I'm everywhere. I'm over the images, the videos, the websites, like it's all over the place, right? So brand yourself first, because people are more likely to remember your name first and foremost. If you have a common name, then come up with an alternative that will make it easy to remember, like I don't know, James the STEM educator or something, like something that will be easy to remember. My branding also could be put around as Sid the Poo Lady, because I got known as the poo lady for doing my poo workshops about the digestive system. So I've got the domain. I just need to now create the brand around it. But again, some of that branding will come from conversations you have with the kids, I think, and who they see you as well, and what you want to be seen as. But branding is really important. Your branding is equally as important as your company's. Teacher Goran. Oh, you got your hand up. You've got another question.
Yes. Hello, Sid. Thanks for
Hiya.
for your lesson today and lots of tips. Okay, you were talking about webinar, I think, where the one that you used to attract students, right? Was it like a webinar, like a free video class, right? Was it a webinar? You talked about it, and then at the end of it, you asked for feedback from the parents and the
Oh
students.
no, for me it was a Zoom class. So it was like this. Like there were maximum, we took I think 8 kids in a class. I have to admit, our lessons are not like this where I'm just lecturing. This is
Okay,
not
yeah,
how our lessons
of
are.
course.
But it was interactive classes, 8 kids. And that was not a webinar. I've not actually played around with webinars. It's something I'm going to do this year because I think you can monetize that quite a bit. And I'm starting a membership, a home education membership this year. And that's something I'm going to be working on because I played with the numbers. If I can get 100 people into a membership, I can make around 9 grand across the next 10 months. If I can get 250 people in, I can make a good 22 grand. And I'm like, that's good money, right? So I just need to put the time and effort in to do that, but that's going to be webinars.
Okay. My question was related to that. So you said that at the end of it or after it, you asked for feedback probably during the class itself. So, and how did you do it? Did you like send them a Google form link like please put your feedback here, or you ask them and they said it? So was it verbal feedback or they filled the form or something?
It's a good question. I'm trying to think back. I think a lot of people I had on WhatsApp anyway, and I think when you've got a small amount of families like that, where you've only got 15, having a conversation with them, whether it's a WhatsApp conversation or a face-to-face conversation, you're going to get more out of that in terms of you're going to be able to figure out what exactly worked and what didn't. If you do a generic form, it's great because all of the answers that everyone's going to answer the same answers, but are you really going to get their real view behind it? I don't think so. Forms are good if you've got loads of people and you can't manage to go and have individual conversations, but I still try. We still try and have those individual conversations at UK Virtual School. One way we do that, every single month, we have what we call a community day. So every month, the kids meet up in assembly, and the assembly is not us talking to them, they give us feedback. And every month, the parents meet up and they give me feedback. I ask, what's gone well? What's been your challenges this month? What can we do to better support you? And so we still, 4 years later, we still take that feedback and we still evolve from it. So someone came up with an idea yesterday, I wrote it down. And she was like, the timetables that you hand out, Sid, can we just have the teacher's name on there? I was like, oh my God, that's a fantastic idea. Like we could have the teacher, we could also put the homework due date on there. And she goes, yeah, that's fantastic. So like we're still evolving and we're still doing things based on the feedback that they're giving us. So whatever you create, there has to be a feedback loop, because one thing I think we make a mistake on when we are in education is we think we know best and we just teach the kids and everything's going to be hunky-dory. That I don't think that's how it works. We talk about a 3-way relationship at UK Virtual School. It's us, it's the parents, and the kids. And everyone has to have an equal footing in how things are going for it to work well. That doesn't mean that the kids get to do whatever they want, but they have to be just as invested in it as the teachers are and the parents are, because if they're not, you're not going to get them communicate, especially online. They're just going to like be playing games and stuff. They're not going to communicate, right? So it's so super important that everyone's equally invested in it. And one way you do that is making sure that they know that their input is valuable. So they even hire the teachers. I don't make the hiring decisions. I do the initial interviews. I pass them on to the kids. The kids make the final hiring decision. They don't like a teacher, I'm sorry, you're not going to get hired. If they like the teacher, we hire. So we give them the power to be able to make those decisions. They feel like they're part of the community. They also then are willing to give that feedback, even if it's not good. Like there's one kid that told me, she goes, Miss, why does that teacher not smile? Is he okay? Because we had one teacher who was so used to being in a school environment that meant that he was told not to smile until Christmas. And so he was struggling to kind of build that friendly relationship and rapport with the kids because he was keeping the distance. I was like, well, we don't work like that. Like, you've got to smile a bit more, get to know the kids, ask about their day and what they've been up to. And the kids picked that up. They were like, there's something wrong. Like, and they're willing to give that feedback because you've created a platform where they can. So in the first year, when we started all the classes, and this might help, we did have a form that they filled in at the end of every single lesson, but it was more like a on the screen thing. It was anonymous, but the teacher could quickly see how they found the lesson. So I think we asked 3 questions. What did you enjoy today? How was the speed of the class? Did you know the stuff before? And then because we were trying to figure out if we're pitching it right, if we're going at the right speed, because all of these factors we didn't know at the point. And so we use that information to readjust. Now that we're 3 years in, we don't do that every single lesson. But it was interesting because the feedback thing came up in the staff meeting we had yesterday. And we're going to do, even though we have the assembly, I think we're going to do a little bit more formal feedback at the end of every month. So there's different ways to do it. But I think when you're first starting out, have conversations with people. You're going to get far more out of it than just a form. Because what you're going to get in a conversation is that they're going to start comparing and contrasting. They're going to say, oh, I tried this with this person and it didn't work because of this. And you're like, okay, not to do this again, not to do it this way. So when I have conversations with new families, they will tell me, we tried this online school and it didn't work. And I was like, why didn't it work? And they'll tell me. And it'll be like, oh, the class sizes are too big. Oh, there was too much of a lecture format. And I'm like, right, we don't do that. And then I make sure that our training is so we don't ever do that. Like, this is not who we are. And so we reinforce the things we do well, and then we stay away from the things that other people have found an issue elsewhere, because we're like, we're not like that anyway, but we want to make sure we never get to that point. So having those conversations, I think, is really useful. Okay. Right. Number 2. Let's go to number 2. Okay. Brand identity. So your brand is a lot more, like I said, it's a lot more than just the logo, and it's a lot more than just the name. So your brand identity encompasses the feel, the taste, the smell, the whole experience. So if you think about these brands over here, Coca-Cola, you've got IKEA, IBM, McDonald's, Apple. Is that Windows? I think it's Windows, right? I should know this.
Microsoft, yeah.
Microsoft, that's it. And so you've got all of these brands, and they have a certain feel to them when you think about them. They have slogans attached to them. With IKEA, you know what you're going to get. You know what you're going to get with IKEA. You're going to have to build it up. You know what you're going to get with Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola, if you look at their adverts, they never mention Coke until the end, because it's about the whole experience. It's about the experience you're going to be feeling. I was actually watching, there's a really good, I think it's Algerian. Yeah, it's an Algerian song called Zina. I think it means beautiful day or something beautiful, I think. Anyway, they sing it. It's a beautiful song. And I kept singing it on replay. And my friend goes, it's a Coca-Cola ad. And then I looked very closely until the end, and he drinks from a Coke can, right? At the end. And it's like, it's got the lively feeling of a feel-good kind of song to it. And it's a Coca-Cola ad. And so when you look at the way that they do their advertisement, it's all about their experience, right? It's not about the image of the Coke, it's the experience that you're getting. When you're looking at brand identity, I think it's really important to look at social handles and hashtags that you're going to be using. Create everything that's the same, like get the domain, well, depending on where you are. So get your local country one. So for us, it's .co.uk, and then get the global one, .com. I think it's super important to get both. Why? Because if someone else gets the global one, the .com one, and someone types in your website address incorrectly, you're basically sending them your clients. You're doing all that work and they're going somewhere else. And so get both, get a local one and a global one. I don't know if you're in other countries whether you can get the .com, but I know you can only get the .co.uk if you're in the UK, and I'm assuming local country ones are similar. For us, and because I was thinking more UK based, we have to, if we're starting a limited company, we have to get that name registered at Companies House. It stops other people from using the same name. Look at trademarking it as well to stop other people from using your identity. What you don't want to do is spend hundreds and hundreds of hours and time and money to create an identity that is so unique that someone else goes and trademarks it. Because if they trademark it, you have no say. Like they have the right to use that name, and they're essentially taking your clients away from you and become
I have a quick
Googleable.
question.
Yeah.
May I interrupt? Sorry. I know that you can find affordable domain names at GoDaddy. Where would you trademark something? Because actually, I'll be honest, I haven't trademarked ITEACH. I've just got a business. So I call it ITEACH LLC. It's a business. So how would I trademark it?
So trademark in the UK, you there are companies that do it, but they charge a lot of money, and you can go just directly to the IPO, so Intellectual Property Office. I think it's on the government website, gov.uk. If you type in IPO, Intellectual Property, I think it's on one of their sites, but it's a government site. Do it directly because it's so much cheaper. You can get someone else to do it, but actually the IPO office is really helpful. Like if you're stuck, just call them. I've done it myself. I know people who have paid to get it done and they get charged like double, triple the amount. So I don't think it's worth it. And it's trademarked for 10 years. So you've got hold of it for 10 years.
Thanks.
And it takes about 3 months for it to be trademarked because they will put the name on the market and they'll see if anyone else will reject it, and then they get it trademarked and you get a certificate. And for every country that you want to protect it in, it's a separate trademark process. So I've only got mines in the UK. You cannot trademark common names. So UK Virtual School cannot be trademarked. Okay. The logo can, but not the name. And then there's a question of, do you get the logo? Do you get the name? I was going to be an IPO lawyer at one point. I did work experience in intellectual property firms. And there was a big case happening at the time where I realized actually the name has more protection than the actual logo. So I would do the name. Unless you're McDonald's, then the M shape matters, right? And the apple shape matters. But for when you're starting out, I think the name is more so to do it. If you can't do the name, then do the logo. So with UK Virtual School, we've got the logo. But with everything else, I've got the name. So Femtino's a name is trademarked.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Veronica?
There we go. It's working. Hi guys, I'm Veronica. Yeah, hey Jess. I have so many questions about this because I've heard conflicting things about whether or not tutors actually need websites. And so are you talking about like when you get to a point of scaling your business to then create a website so that you can direct clients, like your whole process of getting work and getting sessions booked and things like that, you're like streamlining that. That's why you would get to the point of doing a website. But when you're first starting out, are you still saying that creating a website is necessary for a tutor, like with coming up with a specific name for my brand and trying to get a domain and all that stuff?
I would say still get it. You don't have to have a website to own a domain. You can still own a domain. I've got 40 domains. Do I use all of them? No.
Well,
but they're ideas of things I've had, and I was like, I'll come back to it at some point in the future, right? But I want to keep those because I want to use them at some point, and I don't want anyone else to take them. But I've got 40. Pay a heck of a lot of money for them. But I don't have websites for every single domain that I have. But it might be an idea that I want to use in the future. So I would actually look further ahead and say, are you going to call it Learn with Veronica? I don't know, the tutor hub with Veronica. I don't know, whatever it is that you're going to call it. Get the domain. You don't have to have a website. What I think is really nice though is to just have a one pager, so that if someone does search for you, because I think being Googleable is really important. So if they do put your name in and they're just kind of searching for your reputation and they're seeing if you are who you say you are, that something comes up.
yeah.
So it's not about you getting clients, it's more about credibility and the fact that you've actually got a website. And when we started UK Virtual School, we had one page. That was it. And everything else was, I was getting clients on Facebook, we were doing Facebook ads. I wasn't bothered about the website. But I realized at some point people were Googling us and we weren't showing up. And then they'd get slightly suspicious and they'd be like, oh, you're an online company, but we can't see you. And especially if you're teaching online, you don't have a website. It looks a little bit kind of weird. It's almost like having a corner shop, but not having a shop window. Like people are going to be a little bit like, do I go in? Am I welcomed in? Is it going to be safe to go in? Or am I going to give you like, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Well,
the same sort of thing.
What if I'm targeting Asian students though? Are they even able to Google and like find
Oh,
a website
Yeah, I
if
can
I
answer
didn't
that
have
one.
like a .com?
So Veronica, the two things that we suggest with the ITEACH course is if you want to have a website, you can use Strikingly because it's HTTPS and the S stands for secure. So most Chinese people can actually see that website. The alternative, which is what we're actually doing with Ivy next month, is to set up a super teacher page. I would really encourage you with the Chinese market to use Super Teacher because it's a scheduling and invoicing software program, and it's also got a website that you can send students from China to go and view from. So we are going to cover that next month with Ivy. She's going to come as a guest speaker and do that with us. So we'll get there, okay?
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Cool, no problem.
Okay, so I'm just gonna unshare my screen for a second because I just want to show you something. And I think this becomes really important when you are, especially when you don't have a company name to start off with and you're looking at just you in the business. So Veronica, you're saying that you're starting out. So if just gonna share my screen. And this is where I say if I search for me, you need to be searchable on the first page. Okay. So if I search for me, there's my first business, there's my LinkedIn, there's my UK virtual school business, there's my Facebook, there's my UK educators business. I come up, like I'm all over the first page. Like this is all me. And that's where you need to get to the point where when people search you, it's you. They could get a history of what you've done. And so if they have any doubt and they don't have connections that know you, you could just say, yeah, just Google me. Right. So, oh, there's me in my
In your
in my
yellow
rainbow,
outfit.
in my rainbow costume. Yeah. So like, I'm all over the place, right? So that's me. And then if I go to images, it's all me, right? So this is all my business.
And just a tip there then, when you put a picture of yourself onto a website, you need to name your picture. So
Yep.
you have to, when you have the properties, you're like Teacher Sid or whatever as the picture name, and then you upload that onto the website and then it makes it searchable.
Yeah. And this is why I think having a website is useful because you can put those images on there. But equally, you'll realize that not all of these are from my website. This is YouTube. So I did I was on TV for that. This is not even my site. This is a scheduling site that I use. So some of these are not even my website. If you're doing podcasts for other people, if they've used your name in it, you'll come up. If I go to videos, again, all of these, this is a testimonial that I've done for like my coaching, like coaching for someone else. So that comes up as well. So also be aware of what you're doing because everything's going to link back to you. Again, this is someone else's podcast. Oh, that was me as well. That's my art stuff from ages ago. So like everything shows up. So just be
TikTok.
aware of what you're
I
doing.
saw it. Go Ran. At the very end, I saw the TikTok. Learn with Sid. TikTok video from science.
I don't know how to get
it's an
into it though.
interesting one. Even if
Yeah.
you set it up and you just have one or two images, then you know it could pop up in any searchable things.
This is why handles are super important. So I said if you have the same thing everywhere, people are going to be able to find you. If you've got different names everywhere, it's going to become harder and harder to find you, right? So I started using Science with Sid, and then I went to Learn with Sid because then my YouTube channel became more than just science. So I started doing art and stuff. But the Science with Sid, my radio show was called Science with Sid, so that kind of stuck. But yeah, Tatiana.
Oh, we
you
can't
muted
hear you,
yourself.
Tatiana. Can't hear you. Oh, okay, no. All right, that's fine. So Veronica, did you want to have a question?
Okay. Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
okay, sorry.
Sorry
Go
about
ahead.
that. Isn't that expensive? Don't you have to pay to be able to be put up
No,
at the? It's
this
not?
is all organic. I've never paid anyone for my name to be anywhere.
Really? Okay.
You just have to be around long enough and have enough fresh content going up on the website and to be interlinkable. And I think it helps me having multiple businesses to do that. But you don't have to have multiple businesses. You just have to be active, right? So if you're actively going on people's podcasts, if you're actively talking about stuff, it'll link through. So no, I've not paid. These are not ads. This is not paid stuff. I pay for my UK virtual school stuff. It hasn't even shown up, the paid stuff. But this is all organic. All of
Okay.
this is organic stuff.
Thank you.
Completely organic.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
Veronica?
Veronica had a question.
Yeah, I was wondering how much of it was SEO, because like if you do YouTube and if you do LinkedIn, like all of that is organic. But with your website, do you have like someone helping you with SEO so that you are ranking higher in search, or is that all organic too?
Femtino's site hasn't been updated since before COVID. So when we used to type in Femtino's Birmingham, if you typed in Science Workshops Birmingham, which is where I'm based, we used to come up top. I don't think we do now. Let me type, let's see. Birmingham Science Workshops. So we used to come up first. Does it come up first? It doesn't now. Because we haven't, so we're now number, what is that? That's an ad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're fifth. That used to be number 1, right? So with SEO, SEO is going to help you with keyword search. When it's your own brand and it's your own name, you should be number 1. You need to pick a name that is unique enough that brings you to number 1. I would not
it's so
recommend picking
specific.
something that doesn't take you to number 1. You're making it harder
Okay.
for yourself. So I would, if you're thinking of a name, Google it because you want to see who else is using it. If no one else is using it, brilliant. Femtino's is made up, by the way. It's not my surname, but it's my brand name. Everyone knows me as that, so I stick with it wherever I post now. But Femtino's comes from the physics prefix femto, which means 10 to the minus 15 meters. So it's like really tiny nuclear scale. So I made it up. So it's not going to exist. So it's going to bring me up. So whatever you do, the brand name that you create around it, Dragon's Den. And I thought that was me for a second. I was like, I'm not on Dragon's Den. Yeah, they came on Dragon's Den.
So is your YouTube channel, is that a different name than your brand for your website? Because you said you used to be Science with Sid, and now
I
you're
have
something.
multiple. Yeah, I have. So I'm still developing my own brand. So my Femtino's Workshops has a Femtino's Workshops YouTube channel. UK Virtual School has a UK Virtual School Facebook channel. So YouTube channel. And then my UK Educators has a UK Educators channel. I have a channel which is Learn with Sid. So that used to be Science with Sid, but it's now Learn with Sid. And that's different from all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I'm still kind of figuring out what it is that I want to brand myself because I'm like, I'm not just science. So I want to be known as more like an educational disruptor. So the branding on there is still happening and like I'm still working on that. So you're going to see a change maybe in the next 18 months. But like you said, branding takes a long time. It takes a long time to do. I've nailed it with UK Virtual School. Femtino's, I still feel like there's still work to be done there. But with my own brand, I think I've got work to do on that yet. But I'm Googleable. And I think that's really important when it comes to people checking your credibility. Okay. Let's just go back. Oh, hold on. There's questions. Are they questions? Okay, no, they're not for me. Right, let me. Okay, so what you could do, guys, is have a look at your Googleability score.
I love that word. Did you make that up too?
I didn't make it up. Of course I made it up. Just Google the name that you use when you're tutoring or you're educating. See what comes up. See what the first 3 are on the web search terms after the ads, because you can't really play around with the ads, right? So after the sponsored ads, what's coming up organically? Is it you? First 2 columns of the images. No, it should be rows. First 2 rows on the images and the first 3 videos. Is it you? And if it's not, get content out there so it is you that comes up, right? Or look at your branding, your brand name that you're using. What is it that you're using that's coming up? And I think that becomes really important, especially if you're working online, because people will check you up. It's great once you're established, but when you're starting out, you've got to be able to be searchable. Okay. And then finally, the third tip is, what's your story? People buy from people. You need to become central in your brand identity. So I made the mistake with Femtinos where I didn't do that for 7 months. UK Virtual School, I didn't do that for a year. UK Educator Community, I did that from the start. So like I've done it differently in all of them. And I regret, but I think that first year in UK Virtual School, I was working 18-hour days. I didn't have time to show up. I show my face anywhere because I was normally in my pajamas working, right? And so it was during COVID, it was a bit different. And I think now I'm a little bit more on, like, if you search, like, you'll find me associated with the brand. I do the podcasts. We do a season every enrollment season. And then there's a podcast for UK Educators Community. There's no podcast for Femtinos, though, but I did the science radio show. So there's different ways that I've used different channels for different things. But you got to share your story in whatever platform that is. So in Femtinos, I used to share that across on Facebook, but also on through the radio. And in UK Virtual School, it's all over the website, but people can also meet with me. So one of the things that I meet every single family that comes to the school. We meet them first. I find out their story. They find out a little bit about me. They can ask questions. Some of them do their research and they come on, they're like, oh, I'm Sid, I'm so excited to meet you. And you know that they've Googled me. And then there's others that come and they haven't done any research and then they'll ask you questions. But you got to be at the point where it's easy for them to find information. Okay. And you do that by being easy to search, by having a website, by making connections with other people, by doing podcasts, by just being everywhere. And what's your why? Why are you doing it? Like, making money is not going to be the one that's going to help you sell your brand. It's going to be more than that. Like, why? What's the passion behind why you're doing it? Yes, we all want to earn, but the earning should be an outcome of it, not the reason why you're doing it. Okay, so what is it that's making you do it? And people are going to feel that. The kids are going to feel that. So make sure that you know what that is. Okay. So my why was impact as many children in the world through education, because education changes lives. Like, I truly believe that that's the case. So even when I started at UK Educators Community, we're not directly working with kids because I can't do everything myself. Ultimately, you're giving other people the motivation and the confidence to be able to go and do it themselves. So you're having more of a ripple effect. So that's the legacy I want to leave behind, where I've impacted so many kids. And people remember me, whether it's because I'm the poo lady or the one that's done the dissections or the one that's online. They get excited to hear your name. Like, I haven't done school assemblies for 4 or 5 months now. And I showed up yesterday because we had a special guest coming at the end of the assembly. And she was having some tech issues, so I unmuted myself. My camera was off, so they didn't know it was me. I had unmuted myself, and then I spoke to help her with the tech issue. And one of the kids messaged me immediately. She goes, Sid, haven't seen you in ages. How are you? And that's the kind of brand that you create, where you're so approachable to the people that you're working with that they get excited that you're there. And then I came on camera. I was like, hi, Javeria, how are you? It's been a while since we've seen you. And we do residential trips now. So I've actually met some families. One family flew in from America, Bermuda, Latvia, Portugal, UK, and we met in Morocco. We did a residential trip there. And so you can create whatever you throw out, they'll want to be part of, because they know the value that you bring.
Cool.
Yeah. We're doing another one to Greece this year. So I need to go out I've never been to Greece, so I need to go out and experience it.
Can I be one of your students?
The families come, so parents get to do it as well. And I think it's great for the parents to see their kids thrive, and it works so well. But it's all about those values that you're bringing in. It's about your brand. The kids knew exactly how to behave when they came. And it was really interesting because we went and we visited another organization run by another European lady in Morocco. And she had a couple of clients with her. And my kids were like behaving completely differently to their kids. And I was like, she's got to work on what her brand is, because your branding determines how your clients behave and how they relate to each other. All the families got on so well with each other because the values are really embedded in who we are. When we met other kids, they were very welcoming, but the other kids, not so much. We had a couple of swear words come from their mouths, and I was like, oh my God. So it's how you put yourself across and what your boundaries are and where you're kind of saying, this is acceptable, this isn't. And this is what I believe in, and this is how we're going to do it together.
That's great.
So those are the 3 steps. Find your niche, build your brand identity, and know your story and know it really well. And that's it. So I talked about a bit about me. We looked at the types of group classes. We looked at the definition of branding in the context of business. We looked at understanding the different factors that influence customers and then exploring ways to increase customer awareness of your brand. I'm done.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well done.
That took 2 hours, right? Oh my God.
Fabulous. Just fabulous. My notebook is just chock-a-block full. I'm sure everyone else who stayed on this long also appreciated it so much. It's some really, really great ideas there.
Oh, there's some
Really
questions here.
fabulous.
Let me have a look. How do you recommend we advertise everything we offer? Do we do this over time, create a video? I feel like there's too much information to... Don't put everything on your flyer. So the main thing with this is if you're going to do group classes and that's what you want to focus on, brand everything around that one offering. And the others you can put on your website or you can put on other places, but they're not your central offering. So for UK Virtual School, main offering is group classes. And then we do like other bits. We do one-to-one tutoring, we do videos and stuff, but they're not our central thing, right? That's not what we talk about first. And so with the Femtinos workshop, STEM is our first thing. And then I do little speakers and art clubs and all sorts of other things as well, right? But it's not my central focus. So know what your central focus is first, get known for that, and then you can upsell other things to your clients. So focus on one thing and sell that and then upsell.
I think it would be really good for us to actually go to your website and look and see what your offer is. For me, when I have group flyers and I'm advertising my group classes, I have a flyer with all of my groups on it. So people know straight away, this is a group class, these are the times, these are the subjects and the age groups. And it does just communicate what your offer is straight away. Do you have your website? You want to show it to us quickly? Yeah, that would be great, actually.
It still needs work in terms of organization, but I think we've got, I've made it really tiny. Okay, so it says what it does. We're not just any online school. We're there to be different. We offer flexible online British education adapted for the modern world, catering for year 1 to IGCSEs for home educating families, expats, and world schoolers. Very clear what we do, who we offer it to, and that we're different. Okay, so when they first come, they know that. And then the first thing that I kind of talk about when I meet them is our values. This is what makes us stand apart. We talk about our values first. And how that's embedded in our school. And then what we offer, there's a little bit here that breaks down what we offer, but the main offering is mentioned here. So these are the 5 different ways that you can work with us, but you'll realize that the interactive classes are mentioned first. And then I go into, these are all the different ways that you can work with us. Interactive, short courses, one-to-one, videos, and then you've got your podcasts there. And our trip.
I'm going to listen to those podcasts.
There's me. And then you've got all our branding. So the branding is very, very, very central to what we do. And then all the awards. Okay. So for someone that's coming on here for the first time, doesn't have a corporate look, I'm all over the place. We have lots of fun. They know what we offer. They have the testimonials and podcasts from the kids and the families. They can look at the pricing and what we offer. And they know exactly who we are as a community. So it's all in one place, and then they can go to the other sections from there.
It's really clear.
Are we employing teachers? You can go to the vacancy page and register to go on the mailing list. We are going to be recruiting fairly soon because we've got some openings, and we're also expanding globally. So we're going to have an Asian timetable and an American timetable in the next academic year. So even if you're in a different time zone. So yeah, you can just register here, but there's no official openings at the moment. We've got short course opening, but it's not a full-time opening at the moment. Okay. So yeah, that's our site.
Wonderful. Okay, let's see. Is there maybe one more question if there's one here? Everyone's saying how superb this session is. Well done. Okay, Carlos says your UK virtual school operates during regular school hours. So yes, because it's during daytime hours because it's for homeschoolers, right?
Yeah.
And then Alison's last question is, my students' family call my classes Alison English. And you work with students in Asia, I believe, I think. She doesn't really have a brand, but she's looking up and there's several Alison English. It's their last name, not teaching English. Should I stay away from that name because there are other Alison English, or do I go with it because I'm a different niche?
Looking it up on several outside English, but it's their last name, but not. What about English with Alison?
So I was just saying that the person's name is Allison and their family name is English. So they might be teaching yoga or something other than English.
But could your brand not be English with Alison?
It could be, definitely.
Yeah, I know in the Chinese market they do say teacher Alison or Alison English, or like they call you teacher and then your name.
Yeah,
usually.
teacher Jess.
Yeah. But English with Alison could work as well. They could call you Alison English, but English with Alison equally works and it can become a brand.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I think we have had our fill today. I'm so grateful for you coming to share with us and just, inspiring us to brand ourselves, to create group classes that work, to be able to stand out from the crowd. There's just so much that you've able to share, and I'm just really grateful for your time. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, Sid, well, I'll stay in touch. I want to get your website details from you, your Facebook, things like that, and I'll upload this recording in my course with all of those details so that people can rewatch it if they want to, or find you when they, afterwards if they want to. Oh, okay, cool.
You just have to Google me, you'll find me.
Yeah, we know that now.
Just tell me you found me from here and then I'll know the context, because that's the other annoying thing. When you're Googleable, you don't know why people are reaching you. So when they reach me, I'm like, what have you seen? What's the context in which you're contacting me? Which becomes
good
difficult.
point.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jess.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sid. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Okay. Thank you. Bye.